On this Saturday night, the emotional funeral for the Afzaals.
4 fountains of sweetness were taken away. 3 generations taken too soon.
The large show of support for the family killed because of their religion. The side meeting, the unofficial talk between Trudeau and Biden. And Home on Wheels, why some cities in Canada are trying to ban this lifestyle.
Global National with Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Hundreds of people gathered in London, Ontario today to honor the Afzaal family. 3 generations, a mother, father, daughter, and a grandmother, were killed on Sunday night while they were out for a walk. Police believe they were targeted because of their Muslim religion. Tonight, it is that faith that's helping this grieving community come to terms with a tragic loss. Kamil Karamali has more on the touching tributes in tonight's top story.
The 4 caskets of the Afzaal family draped in Canadian flags, a nod to their new home after immigrating from Pakistan 14 years ago.
Is an apt testimony of the fact that the entire Canadian nation stands with them.
Hundreds of supporters from London, Ontario's Muslim community and beyond came to the Islamic Centre of southwestern Ontario. Religious leaders led the crowd in prayer, mourning for the lives lost. Salman Afzaal, Madiha Salman, Yumna Afzaal, and her grandmother Talat Afzaal.
4 fountains of sweetness were taken away. 3 generations taken too soon. The loss to our family immense.
But a belief held strongly in the Muslim faith that all 4 are in a better place.
Never think of those brothers and sisters as dead. They are very much alive. They are with us.
Earlier in the day, a private service took place at a nearby funeral home. The Afzaal family had a few relatives in London and the Greater Toronto area, but many came from Pakistan, the UK, and the US to be here and support the lone survivor of the attack, 9-year-old Fayez Afzaal. He remains in hospital, now orphaned and unable to attend his family's funeral.
They've come in throughout the town. They're all going to be here to support him now, to make sure that he is taken care of.
Family friends say he was surrounded by loved ones in hospital while watching the funeral.
It's a very emotional day. I don't think they'll realize what has happened until it's done. And that's natural with most funerals, especially for them because it's so charged emotionally.
As the procession left the Islamic Center, the 4 caskets were taken to a nearby Muslim cemetery for another private service. A family and community now trying to move on, but hoping these senseless deaths spark a call for change. In response to this tragedy, members of all parties in the House of Commons have agreed to organize an emergency national summit to combat Islamophobia, but no timeline has been set. Robin.
Kamil Karamali in London, Ontario. To breaking news out of Saskatchewan, an RCMP officer has died while on duty. The Mounties say 26-year-old Constable Shelby Patton was killed this morning while following 2 suspects driving a stolen truck east of Regina.
During the course of the stop, while outside of his police vehicle, Constable Patton was struck and killed by the truck. Sadly, Constable Patton died at the scene.
The vehicle fled the scene, and less than 2 hours later, 2 suspects were arrested in a rural area. A man and woman are now in police custody. The RCMP's Major Crimes Unit has taken over the investigation. And we have more breaking news with Global's continuing investigation into misconduct within the Canadian Armed Forces. Mercedes Stevenson joins us now from Ottawa. Mercedes, what's the latest?
Well, Robin, there's been a lot of concern about how serious the commitment is in the Canadian Armed Forces in terms of rooting out and dealing with sexual misconduct. It's been something that we have seen leaders at the highest levels call for. And of course, the most prominent case was that broken by Global News with the allegations of sexual misconduct against General Jonathan Vance. He's now retired, but he was the chief of the defense staff. Global News has learned that General Vance was out golfing with 2 of the most senior members of the Canadian Armed Forces this week. He was at a golf course in eastern Ottawa having a round of golf with these two very senior officers, and they are Vice Chief of the Defence Staff, General Mike Rouleau. He is the person who the military police report to. The same military police who are investigating General Vance right now on those allegations of sexual misconduct, which retired General Vance denies. Also present was the head of the Canadian Navy, Admiral Craig Baines. Admiral Baines runs all of Canada's warships, and of course one of the most high-profile alleged victims is a woman in the Canadian Navy who has made allegations against Admiral Art MacDonald. So you have the person who the military police report into, as well as the second in command of the Canadian Armed Forces, along with the head of the Canadian Navy, out golfing with somebody who is under military police investigation right now for sexual misconduct. The sources we spoke to were deeply concerned about this, deeply concerned about the message that it sends while publicly encouraging women to come forward, but privately socializing with somebody who's under investigation. I have spoken with both the Minister's office and I've also spoken with the Department of National Defence. The Minister's office said that they considered these allegations not allegations. They're saying they are aware that the golf game happened now. They didn't know about it until media started contacting them, but they say that this is troubling and unacceptable, and that the minister is going to be talking to the Chief of the Defence Staff against next steps for these two very senior officers. The military itself is saying that they recognize the seriousness of this matter. They're also trying to get some facts before they proceed with next steps. But Robin, you can imagine in an environment where women have said that they are afraid to come forward, afraid their allegations will be taken seriously, that they have concerns that there is an old boys club that is operating, and beyond that, they're concerned about the independence of the military police. This is something that is raising a lot of eyebrows in Ottawa tonight. Robin?
Mercedes Stevenson reporting from Ottawa. Thanks for that. Dealing with China's communist government. That topic dominated talks at the G7 summit today. It's crucial for Canada because of the two Canadian men languishing in Chinese prisons. Our Prime Minister has yet to officially meet with the U.S. President to discuss the matter. But Justin Trudeau managed to snag a few moments with Joe Biden. Here's Abigail Bimman with the side meeting at the summit.
The famous red arrows treated world leaders to a dazzling fly past. But at the G7, the new American president is the real star.
It's a Biden show, and it's an opportunity for Joe Biden and the closest allies of the United States to demonstrate that they're going to be working together on a range of issues.
Justin Trudeau has not yet secured a formal bilateral meeting with the leader of our closest neighbor. In summit speak, Trudeau scored some pull-asides instead. In a brief conversation Saturday morning, the pair discussed the Canada-U.S. border, neither side ready for a reopening announcement. Trudeau also raised the issue of the two Canadians detained in China. And he talked about Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor with the whole G7 team when the UK Prime Minister asked Trudeau to lead a discussion about China. Overshadowed again, though, by a bold American proposal to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative. The superpower pours billions of dollars into other countries' infrastructure, stoking concerns about increased influence and debt. The new Biden Build Back Better World plan aims at helping poorer countries with infrastructure, but there's no costing and no word about what Canada thinks of the plan. Trudeau sat down with three other leaders today, from the newest to the most senior.
Your perspective and your voice resounds strongly through the G7 table.
When the German Chancellor retires this fall, Justin Trudeau becomes the most senior leader at the summit. But what kind of leadership emerges this weekend on China, climate change, and the specifics of the vaccine sharing agreement still remain to be seen, with more details expected Sunday when the summit wraps up. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Falmouth, England.
And when the G7 summit ends, the American president will meet with Vladimir Putin, the first face-to-face meeting between the two leaders since Joe Biden won the election. Relations between the two countries are at an historic low. And as Jennifer Johnson reports, Biden aims to press Russia's president on cyber attacks linked to the Kremlin.
U.S. President Joe Biden has said he wants a stable and predictable relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin. But at the G7 summit, he's kept a tight lip on what will be discussed when the two leaders meet in Switzerland.
Mr. President, what's your message to Putin?
So you have to deliver it.
Putin says he's going into next week's summit with U.S.-Russia relations at a historic low. The Russian leader had a close relationship with former President Donald Trump, who he called colorful, but believes he can work with Biden.
President Biden, of course, is radically different from Trump because President Biden is a career man. He has spent virtually his entire adulthood in politics.
The White House says Biden will confront Putin on several thorny issues.
That includes human rights, that includes incursion on the Ukrainian border, that includes cyber attacks.
The Biden administration is getting heat from Congress to slap new sanctions against the Kremlin after cyber attacks, allegedly from Russian criminals, hit America's economy. The latest shut down one of the world's largest meat suppliers. Another against Colonial Pipeline caused major gas shortages along the East Coast.
Only until we have consequences to bad behavior will the bad behavior stop.
Putin calls allegations that Russians are behind the attacks nonsense. He also denies his country is going to supply Iran with satellite technology to target U.S. military.
It's just fake news. At the very least, I don't know anything about this kind of thing.
Putin also scoffs at allegations he's had any hand in the deaths of several of his critics. President Biden has called Putin a killer. The new man in the White House is going into this summit not shying away from tough talk and an even tougher agenda. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Coming up, a Canadian university is looking for a leader experienced in psychedelics. The University of Calgary is searching for the country's first psychedelics research chair. There's growing interest in the use of mind-altering compounds like ketamine, MDMA, and psilocybin to treat mental health issues. Psychedelic therapies can be difficult to access because of limited medical evidence supporting them. But as Heather Yourex-West explains, a Calgary philanthropist is hoping to change that.
For nearly a decade, John Finley fought with suicidal thoughts almost every day.
I had an incident in the hospital, and when I got out, my doctor, he said, well, he says there's really only one hope left for you, and that's this ketamine treatment.
Used for years as an anesthetic, ketamine is one of the only psychedelic therapies readily available to Canadians as a treatment for mental illness. Still, it can be difficult to access. For each appointment, Finley must make a 5-hour drive from his home in Medicine Hat to the nearest clinic in Saskatoon.
I had worked in acute care for about 7 years. Lots of patients with treatment-resistant depression that were coming into hospital over and over and just not able to get any relief.
Dr. Hooper's clinic provides ketamine therapy and ketamine-supported psychotherapy to patients from across Western Canada. But she'd love to one day offer other psychedelic therapies, too.
I think there are a couple of things that are holding us back right now. The stigmatization and criminalization. I think the way to remove those barriers is to start with research.
Calgary trader Jim Parker felt compelled to help after seeing a family member benefit from ketamine. His $3 million donation will help establish the country's first research chair at the University of Calgary.
I think it's going to fast track this field of science, quite significantly in terms of actually taking it from just an idea into something that we can implement or not.
Taylor cautions that while some early research has been promising, there is also evidence these therapies may not be effective for all.
I judge how it's working by three things, really. Am I depressed? Do I have a suicidal thought? And my anger. And all three of those I no longer have.
There is no doubt in John Finley's mind, ketamine therapy saved his life. More research he hopes will make these therapies more accessible to all. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
Still ahead, the issues facing India's three-tiered healthcare system.
You're watching Global National.
India has been hit hard by the pandemic. It has recorded more than 29 million cases of COVID-19, second only to the U.S. Many factors contributed to the spread of the virus, including high population density, a more transmissible variant, and the country's three-tiered healthcare system. Arabella Seebaluck reports.
Rajkumar Singh's brother-in-law has been admitted to a COVID ward in Delhi, but it wasn't easy. He blames the government and people in positions of influence who get access to critical hospital admissions faster than people from his socio-economic background or neighborhood.
It is very difficult to get an admission in hospital. We couldn't find a free bed. For the last 4 days, we went through all the hospitals, but there was no admission anywhere. But I managed to get it at this government hospital here.
He isn't the only one, but few people we asked wanted to comment publicly. Many are also reluctant to confirm if they've had to offer bribes for a hospital admission. Bribing, or bakshish as it's referred to locally, is a common administrative practice here.
But the reality is, the big people here don't have the hassles we do. They get a good and prompt service. Common people like us don't get that.
Too often, the quality of care afforded the sick and dying comes down to class. Vikas Kansal lost his mother. She was able to get hospital admission, but died when the oxygen she needed to live was turned off. Since he couldn't visit, he got the help of a hospital assistant so he could see her via video call the night before she died.
I can say this hospital doesn't care anymore. They aren't caring towards COVID patients. Patients are all the same.
Hospitals have been operating beyond capacity for weeks. There are a total of 700,000 beds in public health institutions across India. Estimates suggest another 1.2 million beds are available in private hospitals. Combined, that's less than 2 million beds for a population of 1.3 billion. As the country battles the world's largest COVID-19 crisis, statistics show there are just 95,000 ICU beds and 48,000 ventilators available. Canada and other countries have sent aid money, antiviral drugs and badly needed ventilators. But more help is needed.
We went to about 4 to 5 hospitals there. They didn't have any oxygen cylinders. There was a lot of struggle to get one.
Rural areas are often poorly equipped, but even around the state of Delhi, people risk traveling to the capital city where there are more medical facilities to plead for access to a COVID wing. The public health system in India already has 3 tiers, which tend to reflect the rural to urban divide. But even in cities like here in Delhi, there are pockets of migrant workers and daily wages who would not have the right connections, let alone the facilities to get admitted to a COVID ward, whether in a public or private hospital. Where this leaves people like here is a question that remains to be answered. Arabella Seebaluck, Global News, Delhi.
Up next, home on the go. What's steering so many people to live in their vehicles?
There is a knife into my foot. I know there is.
Queen Elizabeth served up some laughs when she insisted on using a sword to cut up a cake. The dessert was for G7 leaders on the first night of their 3-day summit in Cornwall, England. The Queen was offered a knife, but said the ceremonial sword was more unusual. Eventually, the Duchess of Cambridge stepped in to help. This is the first time Britain's royals are taking part in G7 events. If you search the term van life on social media, you'll find millions of posts. Most photos show a bohemian lifestyle or sense of adventure. But the nomadic lifestyle of living in a vehicle isn't always romantic and carefree. For some, it's all they can afford. Kayla McLean explains.
At this shop, vans are converted into homes. Since the pandemic started, Madison McNair and her husband's business has been nonstop.
It's been really incredible. So we're already booking into 2022 and 2023.
Van life, the lure of freedom and travel in a self-contained home on wheels, has given rise to a social media phenomenon, which in part has been fueled by COVID-19. For some, it's choice. For others, it's necessity.
Rent's expensive. Jobs are unstable. How do I sign a 12-month lease if my job won't give me a 12-month stability? These vehicles are far more about freedom, self-control, autonomy.
This is also another place that we stay at sometimes.
In Squamish, BC, Thomasina Pigeon lives in this van with her 14-year-old daughter.
feels like the way that I'm supposed to live. When I'm in a house, I feel really restricted.
While Thomasina prefers this lifestyle, she couldn't afford to pay rent, even if she wanted to.
I don't really make that much money. I own my own business, but the amount of money that I make is below poverty level.
With job losses, skyrocketing rent, and the booming housing market, some people have been forced into vehicle living. And as Canada's affordable housing crisis worsens, tensions between cities and van dwellers seems to be growing. Some municipalities are cracking down on RVs, trailers, and vans illegally parked on streets. Squamish is no exception, passing bylaw changes that would prevent people sleeping in their vehicle overnight in certain public spaces. Thomasina co-directs an advocacy group fighting the bylaw.
I think the bylaws and the laws in general need to reflect this growing reality that a lot of people are choosing vehicles as homes, and it's a trend and it's not going to go away.
Karen Elliott is the mayor of Squamish. She says the amendments are to manage the tourist population and not aimed at long-term vehicle residents.
It is not targeting people that call Squamish home full-time. It really is about managing the influx of thousands of vehicles each summer and thousands of people that are looking for a place to stay.
Back at the shop, there's no slowing down, and the couple knows the van life trend will continue, out of desire or need.
Ultimately, it's about taking leaps and finding what works for you. And apparently in pandemic times, if you've decided you don't like your van, there is someone that will buy that van.
Kayla McLean, Global News, Toronto.
To learn more about why some municipalities are now cracking down on van lifers, watch The New Reality tonight at 7 p.m. on Global. And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, your Canada is Spillers Cove in Trinity Bay, Newfoundland and Labrador. We'd love to see your corner of the country, so please keep sending your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.